Before we start the video, a massive thank you to Vidya for their support on Patreon. I hope you enjoy the video, my friend. And as always, a massive thank you to Halo Burner and Ryan Bellin for their massive continued support of the channel this month on Patreon. It is sincerely appreciated, gentlemen, and I hope you enjoy the video. Hello everybody, hopefully today we'll finish up the scripts on the ladder, and then we can also get all of the animation states in place for all the core logic. So I'm going to begin by overriding my on-trigger enter and on-trigger exit, and we're going to go ahead and start putting in some logic. Now, on-trigger enter, we're going to make a local player variable. We're going to say other.getComponentPlayerManager. If the player is null, obviously we're going to return. Now we're also going to say if the player is not the owner, we're going to return. And we're doing this here because we want to keep track of that player climbing ladder variable, because we're going to make that, we're going to check to see if it's null at some point, and then we're going to make it null after we leave the trigger. So player climbing ladder is equal to player if obviously we're the owner. And then we're going to say if the player is not climbing a ladder, we're going to say player.playerInteractionManager. And then we're going to say, where is this? Add interaction to list this. So if you're not climbing the ladder and you enter this trigger, then we're going to give you the interaction. Then we're going to say if player network manager is climbing ladder.value. And then inside here, we're just going to simply say, let's make some code here. Wait for them to stop climbing before sending them a pop-up. So why am I saying this? Well, if you're climbing down the ladder, you're going to enter from the top. So that means you're going to enter the trigger as you come down to the bottom. We don't want to send you the pop-up for climbing a ladder again because you're already on the ladder. So when you're done and you get off the ladder, then we can give you the pop-up. This is because, as I said before, let's make a coroutine, by the way, for delay pop-up coroutine, a local variable. As I said before, there are two interactable objects on this ladder, one on the top and one on the bottom. If you start from the top, you're obviously going to pass through the bottom's interactable as you climb down. So private enumerator, wait for player to conclude climbing before sending pop-up. That is a mouthful, but it works. Now inside this, I'm going to say while, let's actually make this require a player manager variable too. We're going to say while player actually we're going to use the player climbing ladder variable here. I forgot because we need to null that after. So while player climbing ladder does not equal null and the player climbing ladder is climbing the ladder, we're going to say yield return new wait for end of frame. We're going to use this because we're going to make it null on trigger exit. So then we're going to say if player climbing ladder does not equal null, we're going to say player climbing ladder dot player interaction manager add interaction to list, and we're going to pass this. Okay. So we can actually say right here under on trigger enter, if the delay pop-up coroutine does not equal null, stop coroutine, and then we're going to stop delay pop-up coroutine. Otherwise, delay pop-up coroutine equals start coroutine, and we're going to put that long-winded name I just made. Wait for player to conclude climb before sending pop-up. Cool. Nice. All right, one more thing here. Check my notes real quick. If the player.player network manager is not climbing the ladder, dot value, return. And then we're going to say if exit ladder coroutine does not equal null, stop coroutine, exit ladder coroutine. Then we're going to say exit ladder coroutine equals start coroutine, check for exit. Now we're going to make a check for exit coroutine, which we don't have yet. So I'm going to say check for exit coroutine. I actually thought we already had this. Right below or above check for exit, doesn't matter, or even down here below this other coroutine if you want, we can say private enumerator check for exit coroutine. So this is going to basically continually run that check for exit logic while we are actually climbing the ladder up or down. So I'm going to open up some curly brackets here. I'm going to make this require a player manager variable, call it player, and then we're going to say while player dot player network manager is climbing ladder dot value. Well, if we are climbing the ladder, we want to constantly check for an exit to get off the ladder. So we're going to constantly run check for exit, and we're going to pass player, and we're going to say yield return null. Okay, so basically while you are climbing the ladder, just constantly run this logic and check for an exit and pass player. Looks good. Now I'm going to save that. And now on trigger exit, I'm going to copy this functionality to get the player from other.getComponent, and if player is null, return. If player is not owner, return. Then we're going to say player climbing ladder equals null. So as soon as you exit the trigger, you are no longer the player climbing ladder variable. It's just going to be null. This stops it from sending you a pop-up. Then we're going to say player.interaction manager remove interaction from list, And then we're going to say if exit ladder coroutine does not equal null, stop coroutine, exit ladder coroutine. Because there's two triggers you're going to enter to look for an exit, the top and the bottom. When you enter either, you can actually have a point where you're able to get off the ladder. Now I'm just going to move this around a little bit because I want to make some comments and make it easier to understand. So exiting a ladder logic, do not send climb pop-up. I'm just going to basically put these all under their own little comments here so it looks a bit nicer when you first open the script. Put this down here. All right, that looks good. Let me have our enter ladder logic up here. That's fine. That's good. Okay. Now, just a couple more things. We want to sync the position when the player is exiting. So we want to limit the max height and the minimum height. And we got to put these in two different coroutines, not the same one, and I'll show you why. Basically, the way I have the animation set up, when you exit the ladder, you're climbing up and then turning around a moment. So we need to not adjust the height until that animation has reached its peak height. But for limiting your height, you're doing that immediately the whole time because you don't ever want to let the player go past the max height limit. But you don't want to push the player up to the height limit until you know the animation has reached its peak, otherwise it'll look kind of silly. So we're going to have private enumerator limit exit height coroutine, and then you could have private enumerator force player to minimum height coroutine. And what does this do? It makes it so you're always getting off the ladder at the actual exit height, so you're basically not going to go up an extra foot or two and then pop back down suddenly, because that looks weird. It just polishes the movement so it locks it in a proper space while exiting, so it looks smoother when you're actually getting off the ladder. So we're going to say while player.locomotionManager is exiting ladder, this is for limit exit height coroutine, by the way, we're going to say if players.transform.position.y is greater than the max height. What do I name this? Max height transform. Let's call this max exit height transform because that's more clear. So if your player's position, I'm going to call it max top exit height because this is only used for the top. So if your position is higher than this position, then we're going to basically make your position the height of this position. And we're going to do that by saying player.transform.position is equal to new vector 3. And we're going to take the x from the player, the y from the max exit height transform, and the z from the player. So the only thing changing is your y position. Okay, so right below that now, just going to say yield return null. There we go. I'm going to save that. I'm going to come down to, I just realized this is called for player to minimum. This should be 4, so I'll change that in a moment. So I'm going to say yield return new wait for seconds 1, but this should be the length of your animation when you're exiting the ladder for it to reach its peak height. So if your animations are different than mine, then you want to use this. I'm going to leave my animations for patrons in the description, so if you're using my animations, this is fine. Now, right below that, all we're going to do is do the same thing basically. We're going to say while player.player.locomotionManager is exiting ladder. Now we can copy this, but instead of checking to see if we're above the max height, what we're going to do is check to see if we're below the max height, and then if we are, we're going to make our position that max height. Okay, now where do we run this? Well, if you remember, in the last episode I made 2 specific comments on check for exit, and we're going to put it right there. Yeah, here they are. Limit exit height coroutine and force player to minimum height coroutine. So this is going to be start coroutine, limit exit height coroutine past the player. And then we have force player to minimum height coroutine. We're going to say start coroutine. And then we're going to say force, not for player. I'm going to change that right now to force player to minimum exit height coroutine and past the player. So I'm just going to change that real quick because that's going to bother me if not. There we go. And I'm going to save that. Okay, check my notes. I think that is it. Yeah, so let's go over to the animation window and make a new layer called ladder override. Make sure the weight is on 1 because you always want this to affect everything except for your ping damage. If you want to get your player to play like a little nudge if they get hit in the ladder, then keep that there. Now, I'm going to make a new state. I'm going to call it ladder empty. So I'm going to go through this with you guys. Now, again, if you have different animations, you might need to set this up a little bit differently than me, but I'm going to go through it the way I have it set up. So first I'm going to have climb up, left, and right. If you're using my animations, it's called climb up, mid, left, and right. I'll show them right here. And now we want these animations to play off of each other. So you go from one to the other. So I'm going to rename them first. We're going to say ladder climb up underscore R underscore 01, and then ladder climb up underscore L underscore 01. Just like that. Now, we're not going to blend at all because these animations are perfectly in sync with one another, like they begin with the other ends. So put 1, 0 here, and then we're going to add a condition here. we're going to say if is moving is true and your vertical is greater than 0, you can go back and forth to the other, and obviously they have exit time. So basically, if you are moving and your vertical is higher than 0, you will go back and forth between these animations. Okay, so these are the settings I have here. I'm basically just using the root motion of these. Okay, so I'm going to drag in the idles now, the left and right. And now what we want to do is make sure we're going to these when no motion is happening. So I'm going to rename these to ladder climb, ladder underscore idle underscore R. And then I'm going to put this one ladder underscore idle underscore left. So basically, I'm going to make a transition. I'm going to move these around because it links up to this, like the right ends at the left and the left ends at the right. So I'm going to make a transition from the idle ladder left to the climb up right. I'm going to say if is moving is equal to true and vertical is greater than 0, then we're going to leave the idle and again go to the animation where we start moving. Do the same thing on this side. You can check if they line up, by the way, by just kind of doing the animation preview. They should like go into each other perfectly. Exit time is going to be 1 and transition time is 0. Same thing on the other side if we are moving and vertical is greater than 0. So then we're going to have climb ladder enter, climb up enter specifically. So this implies you're starting from the bottom. And I'm going to call this climb underscore up underscore enter underscore 01. And this is core climb up enter 01 if using these animations. And then I'm going to make a transition to ladder idle R. I'm going to say 1, 0. And then I'm going to make a transition from climb up R down to the ladder idle. I'm going to make 2. So if either of these conditions are true, you will go. Well, the first condition is if you're not moving, you're going to go to the idle. So movement is forced to a halt. The second condition is if your vertical is 0, or rather less than 0, you're going to go back to this idle. So then we're going to do the same thing on this side with the exact same conditions. If you're not moving, you're going to go back to this idle. And then if your vertical is less than 0, you're going to go back to this idle. So you see what's happening. We can't actually go to the climb down animation until we pass through the idle animation. So it gives you that the full basically animation playthrough on the climbing portion. So there's no blending happening. You're just going from perfectly from link to link. Now do the same thing with the climb down. I'm going to rename them to the same thing except up becomes down. And we're just going to link them the other way. It's identical. I am going to check, though, to make sure that these are lining up properly because I have a feeling that I'm supposed to put these on around the other side. So first, though, we'll link them up with each other. Same thing as the climb ups. So this is going to be the exact same thing, except now instead of checking for a vertical greater than 0, we're checking for a vertical less than 0. So is moving is true, and vertical is less than 0. It's just the inverse of what we have up there. Identical in every other way, including how we set it up to the idle animations. So again, if is moving is true and vertical is less than 0, there you go. That's your back and forth between these two. Now I'm going to make a transition from my idle. I'm just going to preview it first and make sure. It's going to be is moving, and then like this. And then we're going to say vertical is less than 0. So if I go over here and yeah, that's perfect. Okay, cool. So you can see that the hands are linking in perfectly. Cool, that is the right way. All right, I'm going to move this around then, just like that. Now do the same thing over here. And then I am going to say 1 and 0, and again, do the exact same thing. Make sure we're not moving. Or sorry, if moving is equal to true, we are moving because we're going from the idle to the moving animation. And now we're going back. So we're going to make 2 of these. And when we're going from the moving to the idle, we want to make sure we're not moving. Or in this case, if our vertical is greater than 0, because again, this is climbing down. So to stop climbing down, if your vertical is greater than 0, that would imply you're trying to climb up. So then we'd stop and go the other way. Okay, looks good. Now we need to also sort out the animations for sliding and the enters. So this is going to be climb down enter. This implies you start from the top. I'm going to put this to ladder climb down. I'm just going to make sure it syncs up as well. Let's just see. So yes, okay, perfect. I think actually wait, let's take away the blend. No, not perfect. The hands are not lined up. Okay, so that should be over here on this side then. Let's just double check to make sure. Now it should be. Yes, cool. All right. So there we go. That enters from this side. Now I think we just need to make the ladder exit state. So let's make a new empty animation state called ladder exit state, and we're going to put our reset animator bool script on this. It's going to be like a reset action that you have on the empty state basically. Now I'm going to look for climb fall start. This is if you get knocked off the ladder. And I'm going to call this ladder fall start 01. Make a transition to ladder empty, and then you can blend it however you want because it's just going to be basically you falling off of the ladder, and then your action override state will take over again as it blends into that. Now, I'm going to drag in the slide down animations. We're going to have start, mid, and end. Start goes into mid with nothing except for a perfect amount of exit time with no blending. And then mid goes into end, but we are going to do a script here where we're going to toggle the ability for our player to move. So first 1, 0, and then make a transition here, and this goes again 1, 0. But we are going to make a flag here. I'm going to call this is sliding. This is on the animator. Is sliding down ladder. And if is sliding down ladder is equal to false, we play the end animation. All right, make that transition to ladder exit state. Now let's add a script here. I'm going to call it toggle can move. I'm going to make it toggleable in case we use it later on in the series. I don't think we will because I think that this is specifically a Nef thing, but I'll make it just in case. So this is an animation script, so you're going to get all these overrides. So I'm going to drop in my namespace as is per tradition. I'm going to make a header for, let's call this on state enter. So obviously if it is on state enter, that's what we're going to use. If it's not, we're going to use on state exit. If that's not clear, I guess you could make an enum for it, because there is more than on state enter or exit, but I'm only using both of these, so I'm going to say activate on state enter defaultly equal to false, and if it is, we're going to check here. If this is not activate on state enter, simply return, and then we can do the opposite for on state exit. We can say if this is activate on state enter, return. And now let's do what we normally do on these scripts. Let's get our character manager by saying character is equal to animator.getComponent. So we're going to say if character is equal to null, simply return, or sorry, character equals animator get component character manager. Now if it's null, then we return. And then we can also copy this and do it down here. So now we're going to make a flag for can you actually move? So what are we toggling it to? Make a header up here, can move status, and then make a serializable field bool can move. And defaultly, I will set this to true. So we're going to say character, and then we do have the character locomotion manager enable or disable can move. You can make a toggle can move if you want. I'm just going to keep what we have. So we're going to say enable can move, and then if not, disable can move. So I'm going to say if can move, just like so. I'm going to say if cannot move, and you can use if else. I don't know why. I just like doing it like this. Doesn't make sense to some people, but it makes sense to me. I just like it more. All right, I'm going to copy that, put that down here like this, and now we save. Looks good. Now, over here, I am going to make sure that can move is ticked and activate on state enter is not ticked. Okay, let me double check here. So now we have climb up exit, left and right. And then climb down exit, left and right. I think that's these. Let me just scroll up here. I think I have an extra animation here because I'm just copying Nef, but I'll know in the next video when we go to test it. I think there's something that's here that doesn't need to be here. Like I said, I'm just pulling this from my project, so I'm not as prepared as I usually am with topics. Okay, we got climb up and climb down, ladder exit, left and right, and we're going to make all of these just basically go into the ladder exit state. Hang on one sec. Make a transition like so. There we go. And I believe that is all of our animation logic. Let me just double check my notes. Yes, okay. Alright guys, there we go. Now we're set up for the next video, and in the next video what we're going to do is basically make it so we know this fully works. We're going to test it and squash any bugs that we might potentially have. Also get rid of any unnecessary additional information, like if I have any extra animations there. And we're going to add in the functionality script-wise to slide down the ladder, jump off the ladder, and if you get hit while on the ladder, you will fall and hit the ground. Hopefully we can cover that all in one video. I'm pretty confident we can, but we will see. As always, a massive thank you to my patrons. It is because of you the series exists at all, so you have my sincerest gratitude for keeping my lights on. Thank you to the people who take the time to leave a like, comment, and share the video via word of mouth. You are greatly appreciated. Hope you guys have a lovely weekend. I will see you all next week.